Hello, and welcome to Section 1.7 of your Unlimited Success Power Selling Audio Library. This section is committed to giving you the best information possible for the demonstration ride and drive. Look, if you have ever had the opportunity to attend a factory-sponsored ride and drive, you can count yourself lucky for being introduced to the best system of demonstrating a product known in the automotive world. If you've been to one of these events, I want you to think back to how it unfolded. When you arrive, you are immediately separated into one of 4 or 5 teams. Usually a team will consist of 20 to 30 people. Once separated, each team goes into a different group activity. With some groups, it is the study of the newly designed product you are about to test. Other groups may test their knowledge of competitive makes, while others may study future product trends, or customer satisfaction techniques. Regardless of the group activity your team begins with, it will eventually involve itself in all of the events. Of course, the coup de grace is the actual demonstration drive of the product. At this point, the teams are broken down into groups of 4 or 5 people. A designated leader drives the vehicle first, and then each member of the team takes turns behind the wheel. We all partake in the fun until eventually you arrive back at the center. The reason I'm taking you on a mental tour of a factory-authorized ride and drive is to make you think. As I informed you a moment ago, and as anyone who has attended these factory functions can tell you, when you arrive at a factory R&D event, the first thing that takes place is you are taken into a classroom atmosphere and given vital product information. After you are made aware of the vehicle's capabilities, then and only then do you drive. Now think back. Have you ever attended one of these events where they simply waltzed you into your local civic center, and once there, a guy with a big keyboard did nothing but throw keys to everyone who entered? Then, when you returned from driving, that same person greeted you with the words, "Well, what did you think?" If the factory who is sponsoring such an event simply to allow its frontline sales force to gain a critical overview of the product, if they can take the time to introduce us to the product before we drive it, then why in the world can't we take the time to introduce our client who is paying on the average of more than $20,000 for a vehicle? Why can't we introduce them to the unit they want before they drive it? Good question, huh? Although I personally consider the demonstration ride and drive to be the backbone of your sale, it cannot be performed properly if you have not yet introduced the client to the product. But once you have showcased the product, it's time to take your presentation from high-tech to high-touch. Well, let's get started. You should always drive first. There's absolutely no good reason for the client to drive without you first making them aware of the controls and features of the cabin. If you need a reason to drive first, think of this. You know the vehicle. The client does not. If there were to be any problems with the vehicle, the chances of these problems becoming apparent within the first few minutes is extremely good. If a problem does occur, who do you think is better equipped to respond to the problem? You, with your abundant knowledge of the vehicle, or your client, who knows little or nothing of the unit? And of course, it seems apparent that prior to having your client drive the vehicle, you need to acquaint them to the vehicle's cockpit, instrumentation, and controls. Everything from tilt wheel to cruise control to wiper washer controls to headlamp operations must be expounded upon. Remember, you are riding in the same vehicle. If they don't know how to adjust their mirrors, you're in trouble along with them. Look, you have to go with the customer. A demonstration ride cannot be performed without you in the vehicle. I know there are plenty of people on your showroom floor today who do not believe in going with a client. They are wrong. What if a question arises while the client is gone? Does the client write the question down? Do they record their question on tape? Do they commit the question to memory? No, the question is simply never asked. I'll bet you that the question was important when the client first thought of it. Now that they've returned, the question seems unimportant. So you ask them, "Got any questions?" They answer, "No." You ask them, "Well, what do you think?" They answer, "That's pretty nice, but as I told you at first, we're not going to do anything for a month or so. Do you have any literature, and a business card, they leave. You call them flakes. They buy down the street, and you wait for the next up. Who won? No one, really. They wanted this vehicle. That's why they stopped at your location. You wanted this sale, but you're either too lazy or too self-absorbed to go on a demonstration drive. Go figure. I realize that what I have said may not be the most diplomatic statement to come down the pipe, but I'm not running for president. If you want to sell vehicles more often, better, and for a higher gross profit than the average Joe, then go on the demo. Now, other than the obvious, there are several more reasons to go on the demonstration ride and drive with your client. They are: 1, to continue your product presentation; 2, to observe client reaction; 3, to answer any questions they may have; 4, in case of an emergency; 5, because you know the area; 6, to showcase product capabilities; and 7, to ask a trial close question. Look, when you drive first, you should be pointing out the features in the cabin area that are easy to utilize. By introducing the ergonomic sensibility of the cockpit area, you assure the client of the vehicle's technical friendliness. You may also be making the client aware of equipment that does not presently exist on his or her replacement vehicle. Now, when you drive and showcase, it is highly recommended that you continue to use the car concept of presenting the vehicle's characteristics. Limit your showcase to those features that are within easy arm's reach. Now, bone up on your nonverbal communication skills as well. You see, you need to know what your client is thinking while they are driving your vehicle. If you can sense they are uncomfortable or tense, you need to qualify those feelings, but you also need to be aware of their enjoyment. If your client seems to have a very fond likeness for the vehicle, your closing time will dwindle considerably. In this case, your trial close question should be much easier for you to ask. Look for signs of awkwardness or uncertainty, but also be on the lookout for signs of confidence and self-assuredness. Any of these signals should key you to buttress or aid your client. Now, here's a very common sense reason for going with your client. You can't answer a question if you're not in the vehicle. Very seldom, and this is in my thousands of demonstration rides, have I ever traveled the entire route without having my client or additional people who may have accompanied the client ask me a question. And of course, questions are a normal portion of the selling process. In fact, a client who will ask questions is definitely interested. If you're not with your client when a question occurs, your client will not go to any extraordinary means to remember their question. Instead, they will simply forget it. However, if you are traveling with your client when the question arises, you will be able to answer it there on the spot. But now, let's suppose you do not go with your client. Now, let's assume they run out of gas. Who walks? Well, let's assume you do not go with your client and they encounter problems with the vehicle, mechanical problems. Who walks? Well, let's assume you do not go with your client and they have an accident. Who looks for a job? Could we have prevented the vehicle from running out of fuel? Of course. All we had to do was pump in a couple of gallons. Could the client have prevented the vehicle from running out of fuel? Well, of course. But it isn't his job, is it? Now, could we have prevented the vehicle from having mechanical problems? Probably not. But by going with the client and driving first, we may have noticed something out of the ordinary which might have prompted us to return to the dealership. If not, we could have walked to a phone to get assistance. Could the client have prevented the vehicle from experiencing problems? Well, of course not. Nor should we expect the client to recognize any telltale signs of abnormality. Now, could we prevent the client from being involved in an accident? Maybe. See, by going with our client, we should specify a pre-planned route. This route should combine right-hand turns to prevent turning against traffic. It should route the client through the less densely traveled areas, avoiding heavy traffic. All of this can, but may not always, prevent accidents. Now, could the client avoid this possible accident? Maybe. But as the old adage professes, it happens. By the way, if you are with your client when an accident does occur, your job is probably safe. If you're not, it's probably not. Another good reason for traveling with your client rests in the fact that you are familiar with your surroundings. Your client may have never been in this section of the city. And what if your client is from a different city? What if your client has recently moved to your area? But more than any of these, ask yourself, do you believe your client would know where to go to test the vehicle properly? You should have a demonstration route selected that combines the best of all worlds. A thorough route gives you much greater opportunity to strike upon one of many of your client's dominant buying motives. A good rule of thumb is to have a route that is 8 to 10 miles long. The route should be long enough to involve the client in several road surfaces and driving conditions, yet short enough to have you back to your dealership in 25 to 30 minutes. The majority, if not the totality, of turns should be right-hand turns. Right-hand turns lessen the likelihood that your client will be forced to turn against traffic. Another reason for taking a pre-planned route is a safety factor. Your demonstration route should take a pre-planned amount of time. Every person at your dealership should be aware of your route and the length of time it takes to traverse. If you are gone from the dealership for an abnormally long time, someone should come searching for you. If you are on a pre-planned route, they will know where to look. This applies primarily for mechanical problems. However, consultant safety is an issue of the ages. I also strongly suggest that when you perform your ride and drive, you always allow your management team to know when you are leaving. Here's a true safety tip. Take the time to make a photocopy of the client's driver's license. On this photocopy, write the type of unit you are demonstrating with color and stock or key number. Also include the time you are leaving along with an estimated time for return. If and when possible, hand this sheet to your manager in front of the customer. You're correct. This slows down the process. But what's wrong with that? If your client is interested, their time equals commitment. Of course, one of the major reasons to go with a client is to help showcase the vehicle's characteristics. If you're not with your client, do you believe they will try the anti-lock braking system? Do you believe they'll take the vehicle into a parking lot and try the vehicle's acceleration and handling traits? Do you think the client will find a proper place to test the vehicle's turning diameter? Well, I doubt it. So at what point would they see if the vehicle could accelerate onto the freeway or deliver a smooth ride over railroad tracks? When do you believe they would test the vehicle's ability to deliver a quiet ride with the windows rolled up versus the windows down? When would the client make the decision to test the radio or the speed control or the air conditioning? When did it become the client's job to showcase the product to himself? Well, if you'll recall from earlier, I spoke of taking the vehicle to a product showcase location. Among those places was an empty parking lot. It was there where you could show firsthand the ability your vehicle has. Odds are your client will not take the liberty of abusing your vehicle in a self-appointed demo run. If they never see what your vehicle is capable of, your job becomes that much harder. A dealership close to where I live has recently constructed a demo track for the off-road vehicles it sells. This demonstration track was incredible. It's also the best thing that I've ever ridden on. It's sort of like Six Flags. This demo run should be a ticketed event. Please, no one under 4 feet tall should try this. One morning, after giving a training meeting at this dealership, I had a salesman ask me if I had ever ridden in a certain vehicle which they sell. And because I have never been interested in the four-wheel drive off-road SUV segment, my answer was no. Then he asked me if I would like to go for a demo ride on their specially built track. Well, I couldn't resist. Now, not only was the ride fantastic, the sales consultant gave me a world-class explanation of the vehicle's capabilities. Fortunately for me, the explanation was underscored by living the experience. This vehicle could do what the sales consultant said it could do, and the demonstration was living proof. You could never have a client take a vehicle on this type of a demonstration drive. This reinforced to me just how important it is to go with the client. Hopefully, by now, it seems pretty obvious why you should go with your client. And reason number 7 is one of the best. At some point in time, you need to ask the client for their money. The demonstration drive gives you the best opportunity you will ever have for a trial close. I know that you should be asking trial close questions before the demonstration drive, but most of these are considered to be tie-down questions. Now, tie-downs are designed to ascertain whether or not you are playing to the client's dominant buying motives. However, a good trial close question is designed to ask for all of the marbles. In over 2.5 decades of selling automobiles, I have found no other trial close to be as effective or as direct as the question I am about to share with you. This question will work on all personality styles, and it will always gain you one of 3 answers. Yes, which means, yes, let's write it up. No, which means no. And maybe, which means yes, but with qualifications. Listen to this question as I say it to you. Now, this question must be asked on the demonstration drive during your return trip to the dealership. When the dealership is in sight, no more than, let's say, 1/10 of a mile away, you should turn to your client and say, Mr. Jones, I couldn't help but notice how much you seem to be enjoying this vehicle. Let me ask you a question. When we get back to the dealership, if we can work out all of the details to your satisfaction, and I mean everything must benefit you, if we could do that, would you like to take this vehicle home today? Now, not only is this the perfect trial close question to ask when returning from the demonstration ride and drive, it also acts as the quintessential transition from demo to negotiation. Now, as I've already stated, your client will answer in one of 3 ways. If they say yes, how much of a chore do you have in front of you? Now, if they say maybe, you merely have to assume they are saying yes. However, this yes is stated with guarded optimism and qualifications. It is your job to clear up the confusion. If your client says no, you cannot assume it means anything but no. Do not attempt to continue selling this vehicle. You've obviously missed something. If your client says no, you need clarification. To gain clarification, you must ask one and only one question. Why? Do not say why not. Simply say why. There is a problem, or they would not say no. Allow them to clarify their stance. By asking why, you will uncover whatever problem is afoot. If you have received a no answer, you have either proceeded too rapidly or you have selected the wrong vehicle. You did not uncover your client's true dominant buyer motives. You have not effectively sold to your client's dominant buying motives, or you simply failed to ask the proper questions during your investigation stage. Regardless, the answer no means no, and you have no alternative but to start over. However, if your client has retorted with a yes or a maybe, then it's time to begin building more value. This concludes Stage 6, the demonstration ride and drive. I certainly hope you've enjoyed this section of your Unlimited Success Power Selling Audio Library. Now get ready to move to Section 1.8, Value Added Selling. And with that, remember, your circumstances won't change until you do.